to the Ark of the Covenant. Like the Ark of the Covenant, there are carrying rings on each corner. Like the Ark of the Covenant, it had the reputation of being a murderous weapon that they carried into war, and it assured victory in combat. So, in lots of ways, the Ngoma seem to be very similar to the idea of the Ark of the Covenant.
Not only is it a sacred object that's lost, it's a sacred wooden object that's carved, that has rings on it, that poles are put through to transport it. Let's look at the Ark of War, as it's known in Deuteronomy, and let's think about this Ngoma, this drum that thunders. This idea that this drum speaks with the voice of God. The Ark of the Covenant is the presence of God. Could they in fact be one and the same object?
According to the Lemba, the Ngoma Lungundu had been kept in a cave for centuries before mysteriously disappearing. But could the powerful object they described have really been the lost Ark of the Covenant? And were the Lemba truly the descendants of the ancient Israelites? In 1997, thanks to advances in DNA technology, Tudor Parfitt and a group of British scientists are able to identify a specific genetic signature for descendants of ancient Israelite priests called Kohanim, who were entrusted by Moses' brother Aaron with the full knowledge of the Ark of the Covenant's hidden powers.
We know that it was the descendants of Aaron who are responsible for caretaking and operating the Ark of the Covenant. Recently, geneticists have discovered that that lineage continues up into the modern day. Now, if the Ark of the Covenant were brought into our world today, it would make sense that we would need the descendants of Aaron to once again operate the Ark.
To Parfitt's astonishment, when members of the Lemba undergo DNA testing, they are found to have the genetic signature of the Kohanim, called the Cohen modal haplotype.
We were looking for the Cohen modal haplotype among the Lemba, and we found the Lemba to be relatively rich in the Cohen modal haplotype. Once it seemed that the priestly tribe of the Lemba was the same as the priestly tribe of the Jews, then the question of the Ngoma became very much more interesting to me.
Parfitt spent much of the next decade traveling across Africa and the Middle East, following every lead in search of the Ngoma Lungundu. In 2007, he was ready to give up the search, but decided to follow one last lead to a small museum in Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe.
He goes to the museum and he goes into one of the storerooms, and it's almost straight out of the movie.
I looked around the various places where things might have been deposited, and to my considerable surprise, I found it.
It's an old piece of wood, but he's amazed because one of the first things he notices is the scorch marks. It's been burned exactly like the story that says, oh, at a particular point in history, there was a fire that came out of this that actually killed the people who were standing beside this.
Critics complained that the crude wooden object did not resemble the biblical descriptions of the Ark, but Parfitt points out that according to Lemba tradition, the original wooden box was destroyed in a fiery explosion, and this smaller object was reconstructed from a piece of the original artifact.
One could imagine that there have been a succession of arks which have been used, got worn out, and were rebuilt, and which finally led to the Ark, which today is to be found in a small museum in Harare.
It's this amazing story because here's Tudor Parfitt, this great respected academic, who's now announced that he has discovered the Ark of the Covenant. That makes international news, and there's great debate.
If one is to think that the Ark exists anywhere, why not in Africa? It makes a lot more sense than many other places where it has been imagined to be. very straightforward about their ark. They said at a certain point it was destroyed, we made another one. But what I do think is that this object is probably the closest thing that has ever been found to the original Ark of the Covenant.
Is it possible that an ancient wooden object on display in a museum in Zimbabwe represents the last remnants of the Ark of the Covenant? Some researchers believe the otherworldly technology that the scorched wooden vessel is alleged to have held still exists. And it will soon be found, not in Africa, but back in its rightful home, on Temple Mount. Mount Scopus, Israel. Here, in northeastern Jerusalem, lie 9,000 tons of soil, illegally excavated and removed from Temple Mount in 1999 by the Islamic Religious Trust. Excavations are not permitted on the sacred space of Temple Mount. But because this soil has already been removed, both experts and volunteers have been able to sift through it. And incredibly, it has produced hundreds of thousands of ancient artifacts. Might clues pointing to the existence of the Ark of the Covenant, and perhaps its location, be found in the soil from Temple Mount.
In modern day Israel, many have tried to go under Temple Mount, and it is well known that there are secret catacombs and that there are passageways that have been blocked off, which lead to many, many secrets. What is down there, who can say?
Temple Mount is a site where many people believe there are things of great power, maybe still hidden. It's a site of immense significance to all three of the world's main religions.
The importance of Temple Mount is really interesting. For Jews, when Isaac is offered up for sacrifice by Abraham, this happens on the Temple Mount. It then gets connected to the Christian tradition that comes later. For Muslims, this spot is important because this is where the Prophet Muhammad ascends up to heaven. There very much is this idea that there's a holiness in this spot. Observant Jews aren't even supposed to walk on the area of the Temple Mount because the space is so powerful. The idea is that the presence of God is here.
Interestingly, this is the actual site where in 2011 there were multiple reports of strange lights seen above Jerusalem.
If the event recorded on video over Temple Mount on January 28, 2011 was in fact related to the Ark of the Covenant, as some ancient astronaut theorists suspect, could it be evidence that the Ark still resides there?
Many people think it was fake, but we have too many witnesses from too many sources that can prove that this actually happened. It gives us to speculate that indeed the Ark was sending and receiving signals from some actual tangible place from which we will have contact in time to come.
As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, whether the Ark of the Covenant lies beneath Temple Mount or is hidden thousands of miles away, one thing is certain. It remains the world's most important lost relic.
I think it's very possible that the Ark of the Covenant does still exist, and I feel that it's likely that at least some people actually know where it is.
The Ark of the Covenant is one of the greatest pieces in the ancient astronaut theory because there was an actual physical object that had a connection to the so-called celestial realm. So, I mean, the Ark of the Covenant is one of the most enduring ancient mysteries of all time.
The Ark holds the promise that it will bring a new revelation with it. It could completely transform our civilization. This is the potential power with the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark might actually be the proof that we have been seeking throughout human history of our forgotten past and our greater potential of contact with the greater universal world. Indeed, if we could have the Ark and operate it and make contact, who would we protect? What would we be opening up?
Could an otherworldly device of unfathomable power that our ancestors encountered thousands of years ago still exist somewhere on Earth today? Perhaps the Ark of the Covenant will soon be revealed to humanity once again. And within this sacred box, we will find the undeniable proof of our celestial origins. For centuries, Native Americans have kept alive some of the oldest traditions on Earth.
Through oral history and sacred sites, the story is told to indigenous people for thousands of years.
Their incredible history is carved into the landscape.
This is sensational. Look at that guy right there. They represent those gods that came to Earth.
And their sacred rituals display a reverence for the land and for the ancestors from the stars.
They're the keepers of the Agora, which means space.
We don't use the word gods. We use the word creator.
Do the stories of America's indigenous people reveal a long history of contact with otherworldly visitors?
All Native American tribes have oral histories that people came from the stars to visit them. I know they're out there.
There is a doorway in the universe. Beyond it is the promise of truth. It demands we question everything we have ever been taught. The evidence is all around us. The future is right before our eyes. We are not alone. We have never been alone. Collinsville, Illinois, 15 miles east of St. Louis. Towering over the flat local terrain is Monk's Mound, the remains of a massive earthen pyramid. Built more than 1,000 years ago, it was the centerpiece of the ancient Native American city of Cahokia.
Monk's Mound is the largest building of the ancient North America, north of Mexico. It's called that because Trappist French monks lived nearby it. It stands 100 feet tall today. It was probably taller in its heyday. It comprises of about 22 million cubic feet of dirt, which was millions and millions of buckets of dirt brought one at a time. Its circumference on the bottom is larger than the Temple of the Sun just north of Mexico City.
Monk's Mound and other ancient ruins across the Americas offer clues about how native people once lived in vast, thriving communities. Yet very little is known about the inhabitants of Cahokia and many native cultures, since most of their history and traditions were passed down orally rather than through written records.
The Native Americans traditionally use a oral tradition. Everything is spoken. The oral traditions actually go back thousands of years. It's just the way it was, and we've maintained that tradition even to this day.
It is unknown what the Native Americans who inhabited Cahokia called themselves. Anthropologists refer to them as the Mississippians, a name used to describe a wide variety of native peoples that lived east of the Mississippi in North America. And although much about Cahokia remains a mystery, What is known is that it thrived centuries before Europeans ever stepped foot in the Americas, as did countless other cities.
Around 1050, the city swells to a population of 15,000, and including the satellite communities around it, almost 30,000. There were a number of these cities all around the eastern part of what's now the United States. The general picture of Native America before European contact is that it's some sort of just nomadic life, that they were living in small bands and camps. The truth is that there were thousands of people living in the same place, very much the way the Europeans were.
Across North America, vast differences existed between the native peoples in terms of language, customs, and cultural practices. Yet many tribes shared the tradition of worshiping a powerful being known as the Birdman. When excavations were performed at Cahokia in the 20th century, this motif was found to be abundant. The most remarkable example was connected to the burial of a man believed to have been an early Cahokian ruler. His body had been placed on an elevated platform covered by a bed of more than 20,000 marine shell disc beads, arranged in the shape of a fountain, with the bird's head appearing beneath and beside the man's head, and its wings and tail beneath his arms and legs.
The Birdman of Cahokia is a burial that was found under a mound in the center of the city. And it's called the Birdman because there's this arrangement of shells that appear to be in the shape of a bird. And it makes sense because we know that the Mississippians had a supernatural being who may or may not be a god, but he's a very powerful creature that lives up in the sky. We see depictions on also stone tablets.
Native people believed in the power deity called the Birdman. There are a number of depictions in the remains of these cultures of this powerful creature who could fly and could move among the different realms and was essentially the ruling god of this reality.
Various descriptions of the Birdman can be found from one tradition to the next, and some also feature a similar celestial being called the Thunderbird.
The Thunderbird in Zuni is described as a being that came from the sky that could create lightning. It could create a lot of noise, and it was represented as a being with wings made out of knives. Now, the Thunderbird could have been a vehicle, but way back then, the Indians had no other reference. So they just said, well, it is a bird.
One could argue that this is a representation of misunderstood technology that could illustrate some type of a flying craft. Because if you don't have the terminology for a plane, well, of course you're going to call it a bird. I mean, pilots even today call their planes birds.
The mound builders, I believe, were those Indian tribes that had contact with the extraterrestrials, the teachers. The Star Ancestors taught the American Indians about where they came from, their different star system, constellations, and how they're supposed to carry out their rituals by referring to their star system, whether it be Pleiades, whether it be the Milky Way, whether it be the Big Dipper.
Our ancestors were in the cosmos. We don't use the word gods. We use the word creator. Ipalmenowani, he who has no name and has all the names. He's the eye that oversees everybody.
The creation story, if you understand it correctly, we are all from the cosmos. our ancestors were extraterrestrial. The story is told to indigenous people for thousands of years through oral history and through the petroglyphs and pictographs and the sacred sites that continue to be part of our native cultural traditions.
In talking about star people, all Native American tribes have these traditional oral histories that people came from the stars to visit them. And it's universal all across the United States that these gods, as we call them today, came to Earth and visited to provide knowledge.
The Cherokee talked about the star seeds and people coming from the sky. The Zunis and the Hopis talk about the star people coming, and the Mississippi Mound people had the Birdman culture. So here we have these cultures, and their legends and lores are about star ancestors coming down, giving them information, showing them science and medicine.
Native American people have been very clear when they speak of celestial beings that imparted knowledge. And if you compare that to the ancient astronaut theory, that's exactly what it talks about, that the knowledge was imparted by beings who visited us.
Could the stories of the Birdmen and star people provide an oral history of alien visitation among early Native American tribes? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and propose that while the indigenous communities kept no written records, a historical account of exactly what they encountered can be found carved into the landscape at an ancient petroglyph site in Arizona. In the American Southwest is a region known as the Four Corners, where the boundaries of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. Most of this region belongs to semi-autonomous Native American nations, including the Navajo, Hopi, Zuni, Ute, and dozens of other Native American peoples. They are all thought to be descendants of people frequently called the ancestral Pueblo, or Anasazi.
The Anasazi are the old ones, as we like to refer to them. We're here in the Four Corners region for thousands of years. And they suddenly, around 1070 AD, just up and disappear. Their cities are abandoned, their structures, everything, pottery is left. They don't know what happened to them.
Archaeological evidence shows that between 1275 and 1300 AD, the Pueblo people stopped building entirely, and the land was left empty.
They were a people that inhabited this Four Corners region for thousands of years. It's still a mystery today, and it's one of the big mysteries in the American Southwest.
Similar to the Mississippian tribes to the east, the Pueblo nations also described contact with visitors from the stars and performed rituals to connect with sky beings called the Kachina.
Lower objects, we call them dolls, but they were sacred objects.